part of it's their own fault, because what they'll do is they'll go do ayahuasca ceremonies, and they'll run over somewhere else and they're doing LSD, then they go somewhere else and they're doing DMT,
right?
And they're not doing any integration work. It's not.
Exactly.
It's more like it's to me it's almost as though people are desperate for a vision quest or a rite of passage, and it's an unconscious unfolding. Like for me, when I was young, kickboxing, boxing, and motocross racing was how I initiated myself into the challenges of dealing with pain and knowing that I'm responsible for the outcome. And so because we've got this sort of passive population of almost unparented children that don't have a sense of direction in their life, it's almost like any great thrill is the next thing they've got to do, but they don't realize the magnitude of, of a full-on ayahuasca journey here.
Right.
One of the things I wanted to ask your opinion on, just because you've been around and experienced and seen a lot of stuff, what do you feel like right now? There's a lot of resurgence of research on psychedelics. And Colorado's now made it legal to have mushrooms, and I think a couple of other states have as well. They decriminalized them. As you know, marijuana is now legal all sorts of places.
Right.
And they're redoing they're now starting to allow research on LSD. I saw a phenomenal the Psychedelic 2 series is now out on Gaia, which is produced by my buddy Ben Stewart, and it's freaking excellent. And he showed a recent study out of a major university. I don't think it was in the US. I think it was somewhere like Finland or somewhere over there, Norway or something like that. But they did some very cool research using a certain type of math that converts all the brain waves into harmonics. And they showed that there's a harmonic structure to the brain, and that when people were put on LSD, that the whole brain lit up and it changed the harmonics, and it shut down the default mode network. But the whole brain became fully integrated, and it gave people a very, very expanded sense of self, what LSD does.
Right.
But they were showing that it was actually producing incredible harmonics in the brain, and they actually showed that the brain's really more like a musical instrument than it is like anything else.
Right.
It was really phenomenal. If you watch the Psychedelic series, I think it's episode 3 in series 2. You'd love it. It's right up your
we still
alley.
subscribe to Gaia channel, so we should check that out.
Yeah. I just watched it the other night. It was fantastic. But I'm just curious, what are your thoughts on the use of psychedelic medicines in healing, and what are your concerns, if you have any, of the legalization of things like psilocybin and all of the various things from whatever they're letting down the pipe?
Yeah. Well, I've some mixed feelings. I grew up in the 60s.
Yeah.
Class of 65. We were kind of the instigators of it all.
Yeah.
And I saw a lot of abuse. I saw people hauled off to the insane asylum.
Yeah.
From a lot of abuse.
Yeah.
So I had some skepticism. We had the MDAs of the world and all that stuff going on when I was in college.
Mm-hmm.
So we did our dabblings and we did our things. We inhaled.
Yeah, we inhaled.
But then, more recently, I have a dear friend who participated in the first studies at UCLA with psilocybin.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it was 2002. She's a nurse, and she oversaw this study and wrote it up, using psilocybin for people who had second diagnosis of terminal cancer.
Mm-hmm.
So these people were guaranteed to be dead.
Right.
And from cancer,
Mm-hmm.
not the way you want to be checked out and you've got time to think about it.
Yeah.
So they're totally stressed out, and they did a study with psilocybin. I think it was the first one that they were doing with that. And what they found was they could do a build-up to the event with some therapy, have the event, usually an 8-hour session, with a guide,
Mm-hmm.
come out of that, and a significant percentage of them never experienced stress from going on their journey to dying.
Yeah, because they had enough of a death experience in the medicine to realize it was going to be okay.
Yeah, or expand enough of their consciousness,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So they saw more outside rather than focused in. They saw the greater picture.
Yes.
And so what even happened on this, that they were going to follow these people for, I think it was 6 months or a year. It wasn't very long, but I think it was at least a year. They were all supposed to be dead in that year because they had a terminal diagnosis, right?
Mm-hmm.
Short-lived. Well, many of them lived longer than the study because the stress went away.
Right.
Which brings me up to another story real quick. You probably heard about the guy who was diagnosed with cancer, terminal, he's going to die, and he quits everything, goes up to Yosemite, and lives for 20 more years.
Right, just because he got away from the rat race.
He just got to let it all go, right?
Yeah.
Let go, let God, whatever.
Yes.
Right? So that kind of stuff I think is fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
I think the idea of having ceremony
Mm-hmm.
and having somebody skilled in the ceremony of
Mm-hmm.
it, I think is a valuable asset to
Yeah.
the actual journey.
Mm-hmm.
So I unfortunately I see a lot of people are just
Recreationally
recreational.
using. Yeah, it's dangerous.
Exactly.
I get people here coming to see me and reaching out to me from all over the world from going. Unfortunately, what was shamanism is now turning into a tourist type
Precisely.
business.
Precisely.
And one of the things they showed on Psychedelics is it's trashing the jungles all over the world because
I can imagine.
people that showed
Right.
garbage laying around and just people coming in and
It's like hiking to what's the big mountain everybody hikes, Nepal, and the big one.
Mount Everest.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a trash pile.
Oh, geez, that's
Right?
sad. Yeah.
Exactly. Well, that's what's happening with these journeys.
Yeah.
Right. So.
Yeah. I've had a number of people that part of it's their own fault because what they'll do is they'll go do ayahuasca ceremonies and they'll run over somewhere else and they're doing LSD. Then they go somewhere else and they're doing DMT.
Right.
And they're not doing any integration work. It's not.
Exactly.
It's more like it's to me. It's almost as though people are desperate for a vision quest or a rite of passage, and it's an unconscious unfolding. Like for me, when I was young, kickboxing, boxing, and motocross racing was how I initiated myself into the challenges of dealing with pain and knowing that I'm responsible for the outcome. And so because we've got this sort of passive population of almost unparented children that don't have a sense of direction in their life, it's almost like any great thrill is the next thing they've
Right.
got to do, but they don't realize the magnitude of a full-on ayahuasca journey here.
Right. And the whole thing is set and setting.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, I was up in Hollyhock, used to go up there every other year, and went to a rave, and these people were just out there to get
Hammered.
hammered.
Yeah.
Right. Beautiful setting.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But nobody directing. Right. It
Right.
was just hammered.
Yeah.
So I think it's got really great value. And having studied with Stan Groff,
Mm-hmm.
actually reading him and actually visiting and seeing his work and what transpired at Esalen,
Yeah.
I think that was hugely valuable.
Oh my God. Yeah. He is.
And then that brings
Amazing.
up the whole thing. Can you do it another way too?
Yeah.
Can you do it with holotropic breathwork?
You can.
Absolutely. Been there, done it, right?
You can do it with a lot of things: dancing,
Exactly.
holotropic breathwork, drumming,
Exactly.
music, singing, chanting,
circles.
toning.
Yeah.
There's a lot of ways, and I've certainly been down the pipe. Tai Chi for me took me to incredibly complete states of union, non-dual states of union, and it took me about 17 years for that to start happening. But the thing for me is because I do use plant medicines, and they have been a part of my practice for a long time, done very carefully and with a structure and all the
Right.
things that are necessary. But it was very important for me to, you can have a lot, entheogens means God molecule, and I wanted to make sure that I wasn't having a chemical experience of God
Right.
versus something that I could do naturally. So my first samadhi happened when I was 35, meditating at the Self-Realization Fellowship Temple
Right.
in Encinitas.
Right.
And I just became completely and utterly one with the universe, and it just blew my mind. And then Tai Chi I was able to get there but I went even past being one with the universe. I went into what would classically be called a non-dual experience, which I don't really know how to describe it except to say it was though I was alive and dead at the same time, would be the only way to describe it. I don't have words in the English language to describe it. And then I've had, a vast number of experiences on various types of plant medicines so I've been able to correlate the experiences, and I can say that they're all the same, but they're all different.
Yeah. But you're putting in the work to do that.
Yes.
And what I'm seeing is a lot of people, I'm going to say, abusing the process, right?
Yes.
So they get their expansions just leading to a thrill ride.
Well, it's kind of like the allopathic model.
Right.
Instead of, I'll quote Terence McKenna. He says you can sweep the monastery floor for 7 years, or you can do one hit of DMT. Right. So I think our instant gratification urge is people want to have this union experience, but they don't want to do any of the work. They don't want to do any of the preparation, and they don't realize that in order to become in a state of union, i.e. a samadhi or a satori is a different kind of an experience, but a samadhi, a union experience, you have to go through the dissolution of the ego, and that is not an easy walk in the park. I mean, people don't realize, hey, guess what happens when you take a big enough dose of this? It means you actually die. You die. And
vaporized.
It can be an extreme struggle on the way out and on the way back. And it can last for months or years if you don't know how to integrate yourself. Right. So I watch it all and I see it all, and they interviewed several experts, and one of the things they said is that we need to go more to the synthetics to protect nature, but all of them pretty much agreed that the synthetic medicines don't do the same things for you as the natural medicines.
It's taking a piece of it, right?
It's just like what you just said about digital music.
Exactly.
It's the same.
You're getting the 1/4 inch of the 12-inch ruler.
Yes,
right?
And it's hard to measure a foot with a 1/4 inch ruler.
I know.
It takes a lot of adjustment.
And which of the other part did you leave out?
That's right.
Yeah.
And how much air is there every time you move your 1/4 inch
and how
ruler?
much of you is going to resonate which part of that, right?
Yes.
That's huge.